Today we're going to talk about what is tech sales. Welcome to the free mini course. So let's dive right in. First, what is tech sales? It's really simple. Tech sales is solving business problems with technology, right? Think about that. There's a lot of giant organizations out there, big companies, public sector, private sector. There's, the US Army, there's Geico, there's Coca-Cola, there's small companies, there's medium-sized companies, there's companies all over the place. And all these companies use technology. To varying degrees, they use it well, they don't use it well. The point is, all these companies have issues. They all have problems. And technology can help them solve their problems. And so what happens is there's so much technology and it's advancing so quickly that just going out and trying to search for solutions to your problems yourself, if you're working in one of these businesses, in many cases, it doesn't work. The problems they're trying to solve sometimes are so complicated and there's so much to them. A Google search just isn't going to do it. You need a human. You need a person who is familiar with the problems that these organizations are facing and familiar with the solutions available to solve these problems. So that's where salespeople come in. Salespeople are those experts. They are the bridge between what technology can do and the problems that businesses are facing. All right. And so when you marry these two up, it's because salespeople out there are understanding problems that customers have and the solutions that are in the market, and they match the two together. Okay. Dive into some more examples here in a little bit. So what are some different types of tech sales? I get this question a lot as I talk to people. Oh man, a lot of types. There's so many. Here's a few. I'm not gonna lie. I typed into ChatGPT what are different types of tech sales, and this is what it spit out. And these are all accurate. And I'm sure you can come up with more. Software sales is probably the biggest type of tech sales out there right now. Think Microsoft, think Google, think Salesforce. This is where you're selling software. This type of tech sales is really profitable because you can build something once, software, and sell it over and over and over and over again. Highly profitable business model. Okay. Hardware. You can't necessarily build hardware once and sell it over and over. Think a server, think a switch, different components, think laptops, computers. You got to sell. Once you make it, you sell it to someone, it's theirs, right? So hardware, you have to make many times, but you can also sell many times. Depending on the type of hardware, obviously the businesses are still very profitable selling hardware. And there's different types of hardware out there that you can sell. I used to sell hardware. Nothing wrong with selling hardware. You can make a lot of money selling hardware in IT. Next is IT solution sales. This is kind of a catch-all, to be honest. Like everything here could be IT solution sales, but it's selling comprehensive IT solutions. So think you go approach a company and they have a problem where they need not just software, they need hardware. They're going to need some cloud services, some consulting, and some implementation services. They're going to need the whole kit and caboodle. So IT solution sales kind of encompasses everything. It can almost be an umbrella where all of these categories fall under IT solution sales to a certain extent. Cloud services sales or cloud sales are the major cloud companies out there. I want you to think of, in the arena program, we're going to get into this more, but there's information as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And then there's on-prem. So there's kind of 4 types of cloud providers out there, or 4 ways you can access information: on-prem, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Software as a service, think Netflix, think Salesforce. Platform as a service, think, again, Salesforce, think ServiceNow. Platform companies, again, we can get into more details about this later. You can throw some searches in the Google machine. Infrastructure as a service, think Amazon, think Google, think Microsoft Azure. And then on-prem, think hardware companies, think Dell, think HP. Again, we can talk more about this later. This is just all different types of tech stuff you can sell. Telecommunications sales, man, this is another big one. Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, the services that they provide different organizations, the connectivity they provide. Cybersecurity sales, and there's more to telecommunication. There's voice, there's data, there's video. Think Zoom would potentially fall under telecommunication sales. Cybersecurity is huge, and there's so much. I mean, cybersecurity itself is just a ginormous industry. I used to sell cybersecurity services and software. There's just a lot to it. It's always going to be needed. There unfortunately will always be a need for cybersecurity software, hardware, and services. Data and analytics. Think Tableau. Think Click. Think visualization tools. Think like Google Analytics. These are tools that help organizations see themselves better. Consulting sales. So think IBM, Deloitte. These are companies that sell their consulting services. They sell a lot of other things, but they sell their consulting services. The real boutique firms, there's big ones, there's small ones, but the boutique ones out there you might have heard of, like Boston Consulting Group. You've probably heard of McKinsey. This is really getting on the outskirts of tech sales. They're not really, consulting sales isn't really tech sales. Consultants do have to sell their own services. Everyone has to sell stuff. So for those of you thinking about getting into consulting, look, you're going to have to sell stuff too. But consulting sales typically is attached to, in some way, shape, or form, technology. Because a consultant will come into a business and say, hey, this, and this is jacked up. Well, how do we fix it? Well, in some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases, you can fix it with technology. And so you work closely with consultants. Integration, implementation, sales services. This is, everyone works with implementation services for the most part. There's a lot of providers out there, but again, some of the big ones are, WWT, NTT, Presidio, and we're going to talk about them here in a second. But also, you've got like Deloitte, you've got KPMG, you got Booz Allen Hamilton, you've got IBM. These are people that take the solution that salespeople come up with and actually implement it. They actually put it in and install it for the customer. What are we next? Renewal and upselling. So I don't like that ChatGPT put this in here, but it's worth talking about. But anytime you sell something, you typically have to go through a renewal cycle where a customer can renew. And at renewal, it's very common to try to upsell customers. And upselling, it sounds icky. It's really not upselling. It's reviewing where they are and saying to yourself and saying to the customer, like, is this good enough? Has the last year you've been with us been great? Do we need to change anything? And sometimes it's not upselling. Sometimes it's like, look, man, you haven't been using this hardware we sold you that much. Like, let's take that away. You don't need to, buy that again this year. Let's take that away. Or it's, you've been using a lot of this software that we've been giving you. Why don't we give you more so you can use it for these other people or these new hires or whatever. So it's really analyzing where customers are, what they're using, and then deciding if it's best to sell them more stuff, or maybe it's best to scale back. At the end of the day, you want to do what's best for the customer. These are ways you're going to build trust with them. So at renewal time, it's not just a blanket upsell. It's what is best for the customer, right? Channel sales, man. It's a lot to this, but there's some organizations that, I'm going to get to this in a second here with direct sales, that don't sell direct, meaning they don't sell from their business directly to the customer. They go through what we call the channel. The channel is made up of a lot of companies. We typically call them value-added resellers. The channel are companies like Presidio, NTT, Worldwide Tech. These are companies that will resell things like Cisco, things like Palo Alto. They'll resell software and hardware from manufacturers to the customer and provide a value-added service. That's why we call them value-added resellers, VARs. And so this world exists. I can get into that more later. And then direct sales is selling directly to customers. For example, like Dell, they sell their computers directly to their customer. They don't go through a channel or a partner, like I just mentioned, the NTT or the Presidio or the WWT. They sell direct. And Dell does have partners, but I know they also sell direct. All right, hopefully this makes sense in types of tech sales. There's a lot out there. The point is, customers have problems, and a lot of their problems can be solved with technology. That's why tech salespeople are in such high demand and they're so valuable because there's constantly problems that people are having, and the world needs good tech salespeople. All right. All right, moving on. What are some examples of tech sales problems and solutions? Okay. So yeah, I wrote a couple problems and solution examples down. So here we've got, and this is from my time at Salesforce. Here we have a problem of, at Salesforce, we really dealt with business process optimization. So if there's a business process that a customer had, we would try to figure out how we could optimize this process from a bunch of different ways. And so I'll take you through a very, very quick example. So the problem a customer might have is an inefficient business process. An example of that is onboarding into a new command in the military. If you're in the military, you know that it can be very painful moving from one command to another. The gaining command, the command that is gaining you, where you're going to join the new command, they typically are unorganized when it comes from an onboarding perspective. You typically receive an email with a bunch of attachments, and you have to fill them out, you have to print them out, fill them out, sign them, scan them, email them back to someone. When you email them back to someone in HR or operations at the new command, they're probably bringing all that information that you sent them and manually typing into a spreadsheet. It's very inefficient, it's very manual, and it causes a lot of headache for them internally. And so a solution to that could be, okay, what if we digitize this process? What if instead of emailing someone that's joining the command for the first time, an email with a bunch of PDF attachments, what if we had them log into an application we built that is specifically for onboarding into our command? And they can log in via an app on their iPhone, right? And we can digitally sign all these documents on via DocuSign or PandaDoc. And we have here Tableau data visualization. So now we can have a dashboard or a report that generates and shows us exactly where each person is in the onboarding process, right? So now we're starting to inject some efficiency into the organizations that we're serving. In this case, onboarding into a new command in the military, so some military organization, and they're going to start to get benefits from it. We could partner with IBM and they could start to implement this service. We could partner, Salesforce, Tableau, and IBM would come together and provide customer success. So once this is implemented, we want to make sure that the customer is successful, right? So the idea is the initial problem was, man, their onboarding process is really inefficient, very manual. They don't have visibility on what's going on, who is where in the onboarding process, and there's a slew of other issues. So how do we start to think through how we could fix this, right? So a salesperson's job is to come in and say, all right, well, I wonder if we could digitize this process. I wonder if instead of emailing them a PDF document, what if they logged into a portal in an app on their phone, right? And what if as soon as they entered some information, answered some questions, everyone that needed to know that, the G1, the G3, the G6, the G8, instantly knew. And now everyone's in the know about where they are in the process. Wow, that'd be pretty cool. And then we automatically updated the dashboard. So, Regina doesn't have to update it from her spreadsheet. It just automatically gets updated from the app we build. That would be pretty slick. You see where I'm going with this? These are the kinds of problems and things you need to think through when you're in tech sales, okay? All right. Who is qualified to get into tech sales? Really, anyone who can communicate, problem solve, and has the grit and tenacity to give it a shot. Tech sales, what I love about it is you don't need to go get a fancy degree. Do degrees and certifications help? Yeah, you can make an argument that because of the nature of what you have to do to get a master's degree or an MBA, or to go through and get certain technical certifications, it could help you, but they're not required. Tech sales is the kind of career field where you can definitely learn on the job. You can do well by just picking up a few books. I mean, look, I got books all over the place, just reading some books on how to approach sales, how to master your craft in sales. What people are really looking for or what employers are really looking for is for people to have some integrity, for people to have some grit and some ability to stick with it, because tech sales is hard. Like, it's still sales. You're going to hear no, you're going to face rejection. And employers want people that don't shy away in the face of rejection, that are willing to pound through some hard times in order to see the benefits. And there are a lot of benefits. I'll get into that in the next video of why tech sales. This is what is tech sales. Next video, I'll talk about why you should pursue tech sales. So I think there's a lot of people that qualify to get into tech sales. A lot of people, right? You need to have some grit, and be able to communicate well, have some resilience, some perseverance, the tenacity to give it a shot, risk giving it a shot depending on where you're coming from, what career field you're in. Military members, I personally believe, have an incredible advantage breaking into tech sales. You guys have been through some things that your civilian counterparts just haven't been through. Okay, you know what grit and perseverance and tenacity actually look like, and those are some valuable characteristics to walk into a tech sales job with. All right, moving on. What is a tip? I get this question a lot. What is a typical day or week in tech sales? This is the last question. Look like as an account executive. So I'm specifically going to speak from an account executive perspective. All right, and I jotted down just a few things. It certainly isn't an exhaustive list, but I'd say the majority of AEs out there deal with all these things at varying degrees. First is everyone deals with lead generation. Everybody has to figure out, how do we prospect? How do we get more leads in the pipeline? How do we increase our pipeline? And so your BDR and SDR working with you to generate leads, they're cold calling. If you have an inside salesperson, maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you have an inside salesperson who's essentially, let me make this a little better. Inside sales is a junior AE, and then this is field AE or senior AE. Sorry about that. So an inside salesperson is really just a junior AE. They've been an AE for a year or two. They're just a little more junior in their job. They're typically also working with you to generate leads. Again, maybe cold calling, cold outreach, or some warm outreach. And then field AEs are typically more strategic in their lead generation. They're going after very strategic people and specific people and approaching them, having done a lot of research, really knowing why they're reaching out. But at the end of the day, everyone is doing lead generation in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so what does a typical day or week look like? Expect at least on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, you're doing some form of lead generation. Customer meetings. This is the lifeblood of an AE. You've got to be meeting with customers, right? Some companies actually measure you on this. How many customer meetings are you having a week? And so there's a few different types of customer meetings. Well, I broke them up into a few here. So first, there's an initial meeting. So the first time you ever meet with a customer, call this an initial meeting. Some companies call it a stage 0 or a stage 1, which is essentially just the first time you meet a customer. These meetings are very introductory in nature. I usually call these meetings mutual discovery meetings, where like you're trying to learn about me, I'm trying to learn about you. And at the end of the meeting, I would always tell customers, look, the point of this first meeting is literally just to see if it's worth both of our time to have another meeting. We're going to talk about some things. I'm going to ask you some questions. You're going to learn a bit more about the things that we do. And if we both feel like it's worth it, we should meet again, right? So moving on to the meet agains is, we call these stage movers. These are meetings where you're actually starting to take the customer through the stages of a sales cycle. So when I was at Salesforce, we had, stage 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 was closed won or closed lost, but basically 7 stages. And so from stages 2 to 7, like you're trying to move customers through those stages. And the idea is it's very discovery heavy, meaning you're asking a lot of good questions. This is where you put your consultant hat on and you're really diving deep into customers' issues and problems and trying to figure out how you can help and if you can help. And then I like to add this, the meetings between the meetings. This is where you have like these formal customer meetings. But then between the formal customer meetings, what I would do is I grab my cell phone and I would text them. I'd be like, hey, John, what did you think of that meeting? Do you have a few minutes to chat? And he texts back like, yeah, absolutely. Let's get on the phone. So I'd call him like, hey, why did Stacy say what she said about this particular part of the problem? I didn't think it was that big of a deal. He's like, yeah, well, Stacy's dealing with it in a different way than most people, so we need to address that when we come up with a solution. Okay, sounds good. So I'm taking some notes down. So I'm having meetings between the meetings with different critical stakeholders and really like trying to play detective almost and really understand the pain and the struggle that the customers are going through, so that when you do finally, like in stage 6 or 7, come up with a final offer, a final proposal of like, look, we've been talking for weeks or for months about these problems that you're facing. This is what our final proposal, this is how we think we can actually help you, right? And it's going to involve, maybe some software, some hardware, some services, some consulting, but it's a holistic solution that we're going to offer the customer, right? All right. So then is planning and preparing. There's territory planning. So kind of more macro level. You typically do this at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of the quarter, but it's something you review your territory plan. The idea is you have an idea of what your territory looks like, the amount of customers you have, the amount of prospects you have, and you have to pick and choose. You typically don't have enough time to go after all of them. So you have to prioritize your time. Which customers are we going to prioritize? Which ones do we think we can help the most? Which ones are the most valuable to us? And so you start to pick and choose which ones you're going to go after, and then how you're going to go after them. What are the problems you think you can solve, and how are you going to message the solutions to these problems with these customers? You have to consider all the things you have able to sell, all the things they say, all the things that are in your bag, or all the things you can sell, and then the team you have with you that can help you provide these holistic solutions. So typically you'll have different products or different services that you offer, and you're going to have different teams of people that represent those products and those services. So you want to meet with your internal team and be like, hey, Tim, you guys cover this specific product. I think that product that you guys cover in our company can really help this customer. So I want you to team with me as we go to market, as we go try to go help the customer with this specific problem and our specific product and service. And Tim says, okay, let's do it together. Right? And so you're constantly working internally with your teammates to try to figure out, of all the teammates I have and of all the products and services I have internally available to me to sell to customers, which ones are the best ones for each customer, right? So that's territory planning in a nutshell. And then you're preparing for customer meetings, right? So you got the meeting, you reached out to a specific prospect, you proposed a solution to a potential problem they might have, and they said, yeah, that sounds good. Let's have a meeting. Now you got to prepare for meetings, right? You got to get your team together, and you literally, like, I would quarterback it quite a bit and say, all right, I'm going to open the meeting up with this, this, and this. I'm then going to pass it off to Tim. Tim, I want you to talk about this. You have about 7 minutes. Boom, boom, boom. Tim passes it back to me. I'm going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to pause. I'm going to ask some questions of the customer. I'm going to make sure that the direction we're going in so far in the meeting makes sense. If it does, all right, then we're going to move on to this other thing. If it doesn't make sense, we're going to stop right there. We're going to ask some more questions and understand why it doesn't make sense and where we veered off, right? So you prepare for customer meetings with your team. Next is partner engagement. So you typically are going to have partners that you work with. Some of the partners I worked with the most were when I was at Salesforce was Deloitte, IBM, KPMG, Booz Allen Hamilton were some of our biggest partners. And these are partners that largely would implement Salesforce for the customer. So we would sell them the software, and then IBM would actually build and implement solutions. So you'd meet with partners and you'd plan with existing partners. You meet new partners if there's new partners out there that have relationships that you could leverage, but then also you want to plan with existing partners to come up with an idea of how you're going to go provide solutions for your customers. Marketing. So I had a marketing team when I was at Salesforce that supported me and our territory, really supported our territory, and I was in the territory. And so we would come up with workshops that we would offer our customers, like, hey, we're doing a free workshop. If you guys want to join us, you can come. And then we could generate some leads that way. Same with free webinars. And we would always, hand out swag and kind of, free mugs or shirts or whatever. But the idea with marketing is that you want to do lead generation to the masses. And as an account executive, you're responsible typically to a certain extent for the marketing campaigns going on in your territory. RFPs, request for proposal. This is where a customer throws an RFP out on the street, or just basically throws an RFP out for vendors to come and bid and compete against. The very first thing you do as a vendor, or that we would always do, is we would come with go, no-go criteria, meaning, okay, we have a lot of resources, and this is going to take a lot of time and energy and really money for us to go after winning this RFP. Is it worth our time? So the very first thing we do is go, no go. if based on the criteria the RFP is asking for and our strengths and our weaknesses and what we're able to do, a lot of criteria goes into it. You submit a go, no go. For us, it was essentially a very robust workflow that we'd have to go through, and it spit out a score at the end of it. If the score was higher than X, then we would go after the RFP. If it was lower, then we wouldn't. And it was really stringent. In fact, most of the time we wouldn't go. We got a lot of no-goes because it's so expensive to go after big RFPs. But if you do get a go, you go all in. So now you start preparing, you build a team together, and you start to execute. The team could be just your internal team. You can start to bring partners in, the IBMs and Deloittes of the world, but you start to go after these really big opportunities. I mean, talking like tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. And if you win, it's huge. It's awesome. But you just invest a lot of time and energy into going after some of these bids. So this is just, I didn't talk about customer success. I should probably talk about that just briefly because it is another big part. Let's do customer success. This is where post-sale, delivery, and new opties. So anytime you deliver a solution, that's called post-sale. So after you sold something, you want to make sure that it's delivered well, whether it's your delivery team or IBM or one of your partners. But whatever you said to a customer, like, I'm going to sell you something and it's going to do this, this, and this, it's on you as the account executive to make sure that it actually does this, this, and this. All right. So customer success is important because what you don't want as an AE, especially if you have a small territory, is for your customers to start chirping about how garbage your stuff is and how you lie to them, or they just get a bad taste in their mouth about Andrew Garcia and his team. They said they were going to sell me this, and it's not doing that. So customer success is another hat you have to wear. You typically have a customer success team that you work with, but at the end of the day, the customers are largely looking at you as the account executive because you sold them a solution. So it's your job to go in there and make sure that it actually works the way it's supposed to. And then if it is working, you and your customer success team can work together to discover new opportunities with customers. So customer success will work closely with customers after the sale, and they'll also be able to uncover new ways that customers could use our software, our solutions. And so the CS people would typically meet with me and say, hey, I was meeting with the customer and I noticed they have these issues. They're open to having a meeting about how we could help them solve these issues. So we can get new opportunities. All right, this was a lot. So hopefully this was helpful. This was the free mini course, and this is just the first video on what is tech sales. At any point, reach out. If you have any questions, you can hit me up at andrew@arena.vet. And actually, I'll put that up here also. I'll put it down here. Ask questions to Andrew at arena.vet. Boom. All right. See you guys.